Ladies and gentlemen, we all have friends in life. And if you don't have a friend right now, I wish you find a friend, because what's more important than have people around you that like you, love you, you can communicate with, you can share things with, you can just enjoy life a little bit. That even happens to me. And you can communicate with friends in many ways. Hanging out with them, live, face to face, having a drink, just going to the movies, whatever. Or just exchange messages on social media or on platforms like WhatsApp or Facebook. And by the way, if you send me messages on Facebook, I'm blocked from my Facebook account. Not that I did stupid things. I don't use Facebook a lot, but with my new phone, I'm completely locked out of my Facebook account because Facebook keeps sending me the access code of my Facebook account to my old phone, which is not here anymore. If anyone watching this video now can help me out, please leave the instructions or the manual in the comment section below. I would be very grateful to you. But regardless of Facebook or whatever platform you use or in what shape or form you communicate with friends, sometimes you get a message of which the intention was not to make you think or to inspire you, just sharing something. But nevertheless, that message, that whatever it is, makes you think afterwards and say, okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. And that happened to me. I got on WhatsApp a message by a good friend from Leuven, that's a city in Belgium, and she shared with me this picture. That's obviously the name of a street, Arthur de Greefstraat. It's very Flemish, Dutch. It says Leuven's Musicus 1862-1940. You know what's weird hearing my voice in Dutch? It's weird because that's my native tongue. Anyways, Arthur de Greef, for those of you who don't know who the guy is, he was a composer, quite important one. You see his dates, 1862, 1940, and he was a great pianist, also a great composer, in fact. He studied with a lot of people, among which Franz Liszt. So this guy comes from the really great traditions. So we have those people in Belgium. In fact, in the 19th century, Belgium was the center of the world. We still are in a way, because the capital of the European Union is in Brussels, and that is a place in this little country, Belgium. But in the 19th century, we were actually quite progressive. That's the advantage of just getting started in 1830, already modern time. But enough about the history of Belgium. And so I say to my friend, like, okay, Arthur de Greef, a great composer, on one condition, of course, did the guy leave metronome marks or not? And so I checked. And this journey happened to be a very interesting one. So if you go on IMSLP and you search for Arthur de Greef, there's not so much music present. But among the music that I published is also this bundle of etudes. And when I see Isidore Philippe, then you have my interest. Why? I'm going to explain that later. So this etude was dedicated to Isidore Philippe. Isidore Philippe, important musician as well, contemporary of Arthur de Greef. And so you see, you get a certain context around a personality. Isidore Philippe, also great tradition, studied with Matthias. So you could say that's a second generation of Chopin student. And also was, of course, connected to the Liszt school. And if you dive a little bit further on IMSLP or deeper, you actually see that also Camille Saint-Saëns, and my screen is a little bit is cropped in a little bit of a weird way. I'm apologizing for that. Still finding a way to screen capture live with you when I make a recording. Anyways, Camille Saint-Saëns, we all know the guy. Also great tradition, a little bit of a generation earlier than Isidore Philippe and Arthur de Greef, but also Saint-Saëns composed etudes for the piano, and one of those bundles is dedicated to Arthur de Greef. And so that's cool. We now have a circle of three names: Arthur de Greef, Isidore Philippe, and Camille Saint-Saëns. The guys knew each other. They respected each other enough to dedicate works to each other. And so now comes the crux of the story. You all know that here on this channel, and actually with everything that we do, we research historical tempi. We focus primarily on the era of metronome marks, where we came to the conclusion that up to now hasn't been challenged, and it is unchallengeable. I would say the conclusion that metronome marks in the 19th century, primarily the majority of the metronome marks were thought from the principle of what we call the WBMP. That's the whole beat metronome practice. You take 2 ticks for 1. As many times still today, physicists use the pendulum.
Oh, this really hurts.
Very short. Why do we do that? For the simple reason that when you look at these metronome marks, there are thousands of metronome marks that do not make sense. We just simply cannot play them. Not now, not back not in the future, not back in history. Our body simply is not made to produce notes in a rate over 15, 20, 25, even sometimes for short runs, 30 notes a second. And before you say like, yeah, between 30 some notes a second and whole beat, that's still 15, and you just said 15 notes is impossible. I didn't say impossible. You can play 15 notes a second, the very best players, but very short, limited of time, like 7 or 10 notes. There is one passage in a Beethoven sonata metronomized by Czerny, where Czerny actually marks a tempo that leads you to 12 consecutive notes, a scale, opus 31 number 1, if I'm not mistaken, where Czerny actually marks in his pianoforte school, don't slow down. Well, there you have the choice, 30 notes per second for 12 notes or 15. So 15 is possible, but for not much more than that. And so the question often arises also in the comment section, also by viewers who are new, and I completely get that. It's a very logical question, like where did this change? If people in the past, if Beethoven, here are the symphonies, Chopin, Schumann, Mendelssohn, Ferdinand Ries, Ignaz Moschles, Karl Czerny, you name it, used this whole beat principle, the WBMP, where in time do we see the transition to our modern metronome use? Well, as I've said many times before, even made videos also about that, there are 2 aspects. First of all, it's not a question that undermines the existence of the WBMP, because for that, you need to go to the source of the problem. The problem are the metronome marks itself. I've been talking enough about that. You all know that. So before a question is powerful enough to undermine the concept of the WBMP, we have to solve the metronome marks problem first. A question in this regard is interesting though, because there should be a context that is reconstructible, so to say, in which we explain that transition slowly or rapidly or whatever from whole beat to single beat. Oftentimes I read in the comment section, or sometimes I read in the comment section, I should say, people that say like, yeah, that whole beat thing is not real, because where is it written that we change metronomization, we change the reading of metronome marks or whatever, of the use of the metronome in general? Of course, it's a transition, which means there is not such thing as a publication by the world's government in, let's say, January 3rd, 1853, where in all newspapers where it was published like, guys, from this moment onwards, we're going to use what we will call the single beat metronome practice. It didn't happen. There's a transition. There's also something in the second half of the 19th century where the interest in the metronome marks or the metronome itself was actually diminished. All of that, it's a complex story, like back and forth. People made progress, people went back. So there is not something of one moment where everything changes. What you all should know, if you watched all of my videos, you do know that already in the 1820s, we have sources that actually tried to implement a new way of metronomization, which was single beat. So single beat was a new thing in the 1820s. Melzel responded to that not in a very positive way. So, all to say that this whole beat principle coexisted with single beat metronomizations in the 19th century already. And then we go to the 20th century. And when we arrive at the 20th century, we had some cool stories. I made videos about the Reger-Straube issue. That was a study done by my colleague Marcel Punt. I've also made a video recently about Ravel, metronome given in 1899, and suddenly 20 years later it was much lower, almost half of that. There are many such examples. I did make videos in the past about that, but I'm not going to repeat all of that now. Today, and the picture my Leuven friend sent me over led to another little piece of the puzzle. And guys, all of that what I'm sharing now, all of it, everything you touch in this fascinating reconstructing game are just little pieces of that puzzle. You will find major sources, of course. The book will cover those, all of them. And also I made videos on those where you can actually, with that source in itself is actually enough. But in the majority of the cases, you will have to start to compare and to plug these little pieces into a big board, a big puzzle board. And when you do that, you should step back a little bit and see if the picture, the image that you're creating, it makes actually sense. And in a single beat board, many of these puzzle pieces do not fit. And then we have to invent some assumptions, maybe some theories, some speculations where we speak about things ranging from that Beethoven's metronome was broken, or the guy didn't know how to use it, or he misused it, or whatever, or that these metronome marks were only targets, or that it's all doable whenever you have the right instrument and practice enough. All of that stuff is necessary where on the single beat board where you're plugging in these pieces of the puzzle to get an image that still is a little bit explainable. On this whole beat board, there is nothing actually that doesn't make sense. And the fascinating thing is that whenever you have a new piece of the puzzle, you go to that board, you plug it in, and then you say, okay, great, another piece of evidence, you could say it as well, or another piece of the puzzle. So if we go back to our Mr. Arthur de Greef, and more especially the etudes that he published, there is one thing that is quite striking, the metronome 92 to 96 quarter note. Now, if you do not deal a lot with metronome marks, or it's just outside of your scope of interest, and by the way, it should be in the center of your interest, because the metronomizations of these pieces are our CD players. There's nothing more important than the choice of tempo, and it's for a reason that so many composers, starting with this guy actually, Beethoven, left so many metronome marks, because it's the most important decision you can make. But anyways, if you do not deal a lot with that issue, you're not the kind of tempo nerd like we are here. I understand that. But seeing a metronomization of 92 quarter note, that rings a bell. It rings the single beat bell. And if you see the date of this publication, it's 1935. I found on IMSLP. And just to give you a comparison, a point of comparison, to put this metronome mark in perspective, just here you have Chopin's Opus 10 number 8, that's the F major. If you compare the structure, this is a little bit more complex, of course, I can see that. There's also left-hand stuff, and in Chopin's Etude, there is only the right hand. Guys, I told you before, the Chopin Etudes today are in the center of difficulties. How many videos only on YouTube do you find explaining how to play a Chopin etude, and not even in tempo, like to come closer? How you should practice, how you should hold your hands, the special hand composition or form that Chopin's hand should have had with his longer fourth finger. All these kind of explanations to explain, to make it understandable to us why we cannot play that music. But the fact is that also in whole beat, and that's of course one of the things that keep people from doing that, oftentimes this music becomes rather playable. Not to you if you're an amateur, it's still very difficult music. Not everybody can play Chopin in whole beat, I guarantee you, just try it. But to the good professional player, the etudes become, of course, a whole of a lot easier. Chopin's etudes are just actually like Kramer plus etudes. They come from that tradition, and you can actually see that. This is just 100 years later, and see where we are. This is a complexity that for Chopin was in that time not actually doable. And so Chopin marks half note 88, which is 100% obvious half note 88 for an allegro. Then you can almost be sure with 16th notes that's the whole beat metronome mark. So you play this actually in quarter note 88. Quarter note 88 is just a little slower than this one. And so if I see two scores like that, or just one score by Arthur de Greef here, I immediately get this single beat vibes, as I said. But let's compare it to other etudes that are more contemporary. I was scrolling through this bundle and suddenly came to an etude here where I thought, like, this resembles me to something. Of course, there is the resemblance with the Chopin etudes, third etudes. And also there you will see a ratio to 1:2. Chopin gives, I should check it, but like half note 69, something like that. But whatever, in the range of like a ratio of 1:2, so twice faster. But I heard your voice like, yeah, but that's for the right hand. This is an etude for the left hand. Okay, cool. So 69 for quarter note is the tempo that Arthur de Greef gave to this etude. And by the way, it's rather complex, I have to say. It's not easy music. And 69, again, if you're not a professional player, and I would say with a lot of practice, this is out of many people's range or reach in 69 quarter note. But since one of the previous etudes was dedicated to Isidore Philippe, I went to Isidore Philippe's exercises. And a long time ago, I made an episode on Isidore Philippe, and I should do it again, because Isidore Philippe is one of the best cases. It's one of the last composers, I think, also that published deep into the 20th century in undoubtedly whole beat. There is no other explanation. And so just compare this here. This is from a bundle Exercices Pratiques, so practical exercises for the left hand. And you can obviously play it with the right hand, but fingers in Philippe's etudes underneath the notes are for the left hand. And he marks it slow, quarter note 132. Again, compare. Moderato, which is not particularly fast, it's middle tempo. I would say it's faster than slow. But de Greef says 69. Isidore Philippe says 132. That's almost double as fast compared to de Greef. Okay, but then we go to Saint-Saëns. He has also etudes with thirds, of course. Just compare also these guys with Chopin's thirds etudes and just scroll down. This has a level of difficulties. So Saint-Saëns is insane. It's like here also on the left hand, right hand. Then he goes into sixth, with jumps. And then he combines right hand with left hand. It's super, super, super difficult. I would say compared to de Greef, this is much more difficult. A bit comparable in a way that he also uses thirds. He uses a complex figure or combination of notes in one hand, left, right, and both together. So, and the metronome mark, quarter note 144. Again, compared to de Greef, 69. It is double as fast. 132, 144, 69. That's both of these. Okay, it's vivace, a little bit faster, long, slow. Both of these etudes are in the same range of a ratio of 1:2 compared to de Greef. And you can say like, yeah, that's just the tempo the guy had in mind. But it's the same generation. These were friends. On top of that, this bundle by Saint-Saëns, as I told you, is dedicated to Arthur de Greef. And Arthur de Greef, if I find the dedication here, Arthur de Greef was considered to be one of the finest pianists of his time. In fact, Edward Grieg said that de Greef was one of the pianists of his choice for his music. So the guy could play the piano. So there was, you could say, okay, 69, 144, 132, that's just a difference in tempo. Or you could say, we have another example where a few composers used whole beat still, while another one used single beat. And if this sounds crazy to you, then go on the channel and find the story of Reger Straube. I also made a video on another student of Chopin, Raúl Puño. I will do it again because these videos I need to make again and again because the algorithm of YouTube doesn't serve you that when it is more than 1 year older. But you have cases like this more than once where comparable pieces, comparable pianists, comparable composers even, in the same culture, so to say, in the same era, time, place, publish pieces where you have in the metronomization, only the metronomization, a ratio of 1 to 2. All the rest is similar. Similar difficulties, similar note values, similar time signatures, similar Italian tempo words, everything the same, except the metronome mark. And again, when you go to that board, the single beat board, whole beat board, yes, there is a story, a transitional story from where whole beat slowly was taken over by single beat. That went very, very slow. And we have to assume that around the turn of the century, from the 19th century to the 20th century, that people were aware of this difference. And in the book we will publish more case studies than this, but the book will not give all the answers. We cannot go into this early 20th century time and read all the stuff that in many cases is not even online available due to copyright. That's for future research. Maybe not by us, but by others. We hope that the book will become a kind of centerpiece from where a lot of directions of future and more deep research is going to happen. And again, talking about this board, on the whole beat board, there is an explanation and a pretty easy one. We have all the elements to explain the transition already now from whole beat to single beat. On the single beat board, this doesn't make any sense. The only thing you can say is like, yeah, Arthur de Greef apparently wrote pieces for amateurs compared to Isidore Philippe or compared to Camille Saint-Saëns. And by the way, and that's my final point, Camille Saint-Saëns and Isidore Philippe's metronome marks are rarely met. Isidore Philippe, it's on a level of absurdity I cannot even tell. I'll make another video of his. He takes Chopin Opus 10 number 1, throws the note in the left hand and then just goes to C sharp major, and there you go. I mean, that if we talk about the difficulties of a Chopin etude, Isidore Philippe laughs with his master of his master. He just points fingers to Chopin and says, "You're an amateur. This is what we do today." And with Isidore Philippe, there is no escape. There are many etudes, even those that I was talking about now, the Chopin-ish etudes, where he marks tempi and he writes in the preface, "You practice the piece until you reach the metronomization that I gave." It's similar to Czerny. It's such a strong case for late whole beat metronomization. Otherwise, you go to the single beat board and you say, yeah, probably Isidore Philippe wasn't really serious about it. There were just targets. Well, we have prefaces by Philippe where he says it's not a target. You reach the tempo. And so the arguments used to still plug this metronomization of Philippe in on a single beat board doesn't work, similar to Camille Saint-Saëns. But if you then go and search for recordings of this Arthur de Greef etude bundle, guess what? Instead of not reaching the tempo, what even in the case of Chopin is oftentimes that we just go slower because we like it slower. These etudes are played faster than the metronome marks. For instance, this one. This is a recording by Jean Dubé. Here we go. I will put a link in the description if you want to check it out. So this recording was made like in a tempo around 82 to 86. That's like 15, 20%, I don't know, something like that, faster than 69. Well, it doesn't occur often on this channel that I feature a recording where the player actually plays in a tempo that's 20% faster than the given metronome mark. If that happens, you should have single beat vibes. Okay, guys, I can totally understand when you are a little bit confused and when I leave you here in this video with a lot of questions like, yeah, but what this, what would that, what would that, what would it, and so on and so on. I totally see that. The only thing I can say, you go back to the problem. What are we talking about? Never lose that out of sight. If you have a discussion with your friends, if you have a conversation, even better, with your friends, WhatsApp, Facebook, again, help me out with my Facebook account. It's been out for 6 months, so I miss everything on Facebook. I don't mind. But sometimes people actually send you friendship requests and they say later, like, I sent you a friendship request and you didn't see it. And just for that, I just want to restore it. But or WhatsApp still works, and you get into something like this, and you get into a conversation, discussion maybe even, and then before you know it, you go along in a kind of discussion, doubting the fact that the WBMP was a real something, and assuming that single beat, since so many people today, musicologists along with musicians, tend to take that as a starting point, even though there is no single beat universe. The majority of the recordings do not actually match the metronomizations given by those people in the 19th century, while these people said, like, please play in my tempo. It's unreachable in many cases. So, but still in conversations, you will see that people tend to take single beat as a central of the gives and single beat a central place. And then you have to defend whole beat, but you have to shift that. That's the paradigm shift. That's why we call this a paradigm shift in music, because when you shift that to whole beat, suddenly all the metronome marks become playable. And that's a practice. You go back to the problem. Always take people back to the problem. And if they do not acknowledge the problem, then go to a piano, take some scores. You only need the Opus 299 from Czerny. That's something almost everybody can play the first etude at sight, and you can try. And there you will witness firsthand how insane these metronome marks are, and you start from there. And when people just deny the problem, say, yeah, but it's all possible, or other pianists can do it, well, there ends the discussion, because then you are not having a conversation to find the truth, historical truth, whatever that might be, but people are talking to themselves. That sounds harsh, I know that. But it's the only explanation. Okay, let me know what you think in the comment section. Maybe you have other examples like that. Maybe you feel inspired and you dive on ARMSLP to search for other examples like this one. If you have those, if you find those, I would be more than happy to receive them from you, whether it is in the comment box or through email. You can go to my website. There's a contact page. I respond to your emails if you send me one. Maybe not in one day, sometimes not even in 1 week, sometimes not even in 3 weeks, but you get an answer, I promise you, especially when you help me find more examples like this one. Okay, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. Check out this Beethoven box, our Patreon page. That's really important. That keeps me going. And for now, thanks for watching. We see each other soon again. Bye.